Hello again, welcome to another episode. Today we're looking at quite possibly Nikon's least popular and respected SLR, and that is the Nikon EM. Introduced in 1979 as an entry level to the Nikon system. 1980 saw the launch of the F3 for professionals, and we also at this time had the FE and the FM as a sort of mid-range pro amateur camera, one being automatic and one being manual. So 1979, in an attempt to get people in at the sort of the starter level, they launched the Nikon EM. These are available and they're very, very affordable. There's a lot of them around, so it must have sold quite well, and there's a lot of them kicking around still working, and they are very, very reasonable. £25 maybe buys you a body, and more with the lens that came with it as well. They launched a series of budget lenses with more plastic in the construction, although optically they were very, very good. This is an early example. You can tell by the chrome button here, which is a backlight button, and the chrome button on the top here. So this is an original of the first iteration, if you like. And this one is the second iteration, and you'll notice that the little buttons on this is blue and blue. So this was the second remake of it, and this one wears the lens that everybody really craves about and raves about. This is the Series E 50mm 1.8. Quite often people buy a complete camera like this, separate it, sell the lens, and the camera's paid for itself, or more likely you're going to separate it, sell the lens and throw the camera away, because it's the lens, this E-series lens in particular, is what people are after. It's about the best of the Nikon 50mm lenses of the era. It's quite lightweight, there's a lot of plastic in it. It's not to the same sort of standard as the normal Nikons, but they're still, this is a very desirable lens, the 50mm. See, it's got nice coatings and everything on it. This one is fitted with the optional, I think it's called MDE. It's not really a motor drive, it's just a winder that clips onto the bottom. Winders were big in the 70s and the 80s until they started incorporating them into the camera bodies. A lot of cameras had these additional optional winder attachments that sort of just wind the film on, saving you having to crank, and maybe they're capable of 1 or 2.5 frames a second, but they're not really motor drives. Run on AA batteries, like I say, just attaches to the bottom of the camera. You can see in this one where there isn't one, you can see there's a connection down there. This is a battery compartment, tripod bush, a couple of electrical connections, and a film rewind button. 35mm film SLRs, obviously. Okay, there was 4 or 5 lenses in the E-series range. I think there was a 35, and I got a zoom somewhere that's an E-series lens. The lenses are quite good and quite well thought of. The camera body isn't, and the main reason for this, or that, is it is an auto-only camera. If I zoom you in a bit here, you might be able to see. On the top plate here we have a frame counter, so that shows us how far through the film we are. This is the crank to wind the film on. It's got this sort of flick out action, and yeah, you can wind it on. This is the mode select dial, so you've only got B, M90, these are 2 mechanical speeds, and the M90 is also the flash sync speed as well. And auto on this camera is aperture priority only, which means that you would select your aperture in the normal way on the aperture scale. You'll notice that this camera is an AI camera, and it uses the coupling down here. It doesn't rely on the rabbit's ears like the earlier Nikons, like the Fs and the F10s do. So it's an AI only camera. Unlike the F3, the AI tab does not move out of the way, it's not retractable. So I take the lens off. You can see this tab here, that's what locks into the lens and tells the camera body what aperture you've selected. Like I say, on the F3 you can move that out of the way, but on this one you can't. You can see to attach a lens, you just line it up with the white dot on the camera body. Move it over so you can see, and just give it a firm turn until it clicks, and it's automatically indexed. You can see there that it's communicating with the camera body. Aperture ring at the back, focusing at the front. This is a 35-2.8, is it? Yeah, 35-2.8. My sort of favourite focal length, really. Top here we have a battery check, so you push the little button down, the red light comes on, shows the batteries are good. And around the base here you can select which one you want, whether you want B, M90 or the auto setting. This is the shutter release on the top, and there's the noise. It's in auto, so it's aperture priority. You can check the meters working by closing the aperture down, and it should give you a longer exposure. I think it's rated at 1 second to 1,000th of a second, but I think it can go a little bit longer than that. They tend to be a little bit underestimating on shutter, long shutter speed. It's electronic shutter made by Seiko, but maybe that is a second. Hot shoe on the top for flash. Again, there was a dedicated flash to the E series, and this is it. Let's sort the focus out so we can see what we're looking at. Ooh. Quite a nifty little flash called the SBE. So again, all plastic. Doesn't have a sensor or anything. Well, it might have a sensor behind there actually. Yeah, it does have a sensor, so it cuts the flash off when it's had enough light. But yeah, nice little flash gun, very lightweight. The camera, however, isn't lightweight. With this combination of the motor drive and the camera and the lens, it's still coming in at about 1 kilo, so it is quite a heavy outfit. To carry on along the top here, we have the rewind crank. Now on the original version, this version with the chrome, this was quite a weak point, and these quite often get broken. You can see it's quite a strange angle for rewinding, so they quite often are broken on these. And it is a standard pull up to open the back door. Here you can see the ASA or ISO dial, so it goes from 1600. Lift and turn. Again with my sausage fingers, not ideal. There you go, lift and turn, set it to whatever ISO it is, film you're using, or if you're pushing or pulling, set it to what you want. Lift up to open the back, and in the back we have the pressure plate, spring to keep the film cartridge in place, slotted take-up spool, sprockets. You can see we've got a metal vertical shutter on here, which is probably why the flash sinks at 90th rather than a 60th. Guide rails for the film, just to make sure the film travels perpendicularly across. This is where the cassette, where the film chamber is going to go, into this part here. I'm going to load this with some film, but we need to look at the rest of the camera first. Viewfinder, this is what you look through. All you'll see is a scale down this left hand side of shutter speeds and a needle, and there's a red sector for underexposure and overexposure if it's outside of the range that the meter can deal with. On the front we have a self timer. Sort this focus out. You have a self timer, pretty much standard. This is the lens release button. When the lens is attached, you've got to push this in, turn the lens clockwise, and then release the lens. Now you can see inside this one needs a bit of a good cleaning in there. It's not looking very healthy. There you can see the reflex mirror. This lever here is the one that makes the lens stop down. And then to attach the lens, you just line it up with the white mark, turn it till it clicks. So this is a backlight button, so if you're taking a portrait against the sun, push this, I think it gives you 1.5 or 2 stops extra exposure to make sure the face isn't totally dark. A couple of lug straps either side. Very, very basic, like I say, aperture priority only. You select the aperture and the camera will select and set the shutter speed. I'm not sure whether it's a stepless shutter. I think it probably will be, being that it's electronically controlled, meaning it can set any shutter speed it likes. It's not stuck with a normal 30, 60, 125, 250, 500, 1000. It might well be able to set numbers in between those. Quite heavy metal chassis, polycarb body, tough as old nails really. They're not a bad camera. quite small in the hand. You can see it's not a particularly big camera. This is with the motor drive on. Without the motor drive, it comes in around about 600 grams. Only available in black. There was never a chrome version of these. Like I say, they're worth picking up just for the E-series lens, really. So the bodies themselves, if you've got some Nikon lenses already, they're quite a nice just walkabout camera. I say aperture priority only, therefore dependent on batteries. Without the batteries, you're stuck with the 90 or the B setting. But yeah, I quite like them. You can see this is two of them. I think I've got another couple kicking around somewhere. I quite like them. They are a bit of a bargain buy. It's probably the easiest and cheapest way to get into the Nikon system, that's for sure. The FE, they're getting quite expensive now, especially the 2s and the 3s. They're getting really expensive. But yeah, they're good cameras. Probably not had an awful lot of use. I don't know if this one's cleaner inside than the other one was. Yeah, that one looks a bit healthier inside there. Yep, I like them as usual. Highly recommended. Great entry level Nikon cameras, E-series lenses, really recommended. There we go. Let's shove some film in there. Film reminder tab on the back. Nice touch. So even though it's entry level, it's got some good features on it. I think it's a very underrated and underestimated camera. So it takes 35mm film. If you've seen any of my videos, you know how this goes. Film goes in that side, this way around. This is called the leader. Pull it across. This is where I always mess it up as well. I always manage to screw up loading batteries in the film. There you can see the film's been grabbed and pulled around. The sprockets are lined up nicely. And close the back. Nice and light tight. Zoom you in, and you can see there's a frame counter there. I'll drop it on the floor. And yeah, you can wind on. I wouldn't load film in the auto setting because you don't know what exposures you're going to get. Just stick it in the manual setting. Usual trick, take the slack up on this side so you know the film's going through the camera. So fire it again, and you can see that's turning, so you know the film's going through the camera. And then you've got to look down there, get the focus in place. That's actually started at number 1. To unload the film, when you finish taking your exposures, push this button in at the bottom, and that will release the sprockets, so the film can then travel backwards. Normally they'll only let the film move this way, they won't let the film move back. And then lift this up, fold out the handle, and wind the film back in. Sorry, push it in, make sure it's always in. There's no point in turning it when it's up there, it won't do anything. Wind the film back until it's back in the cassette. I don't know if it popped off or not. I'd like to leave the leader out so I can use it again. No, I wound it all the way back in. That's annoying. And lift this up to get the film out. And then you'd send it off for processing, or you'd load it in a tank and process it yourself. There we go, that got it out. And then this one's got the obvious advantage of having the winder on it, so it's a little bit different. There's an on-off switch on the side here, so you just got to turn that to on. There you go, it's quite loud. You can see the mirrors moving inside, it's taking the picture and winding the film on. Quite convenient. It does make the camera a little bit better to grip, I think. And yeah, now we're getting on long exposures. So that's just a winder. It is only a winder, it's not a motor drive. Again, if you want to unload with this fitted, there is a push button down the bottom and a tripod bush as well. It will only wind as fast as you can click, so it's not a motor drive at all. So there we go, folks, that's the video for today. Introduction to the Nikon EM and the E series. There's some lenses, there's a flash gun, there's a motor drive, well, a winder, and there's a series of lenses. The lenses are highly recommended. The bodies, for £20, it's just a cheap way of shooting film. If it breaks, you just get yourself another one. There's loads of them about. And yeah, good introduction to the Nikon system. I should point out they also work very well with autofocus lenses. This is a somewhat later lens. This is, let me see, an 18 to 35, and this is a D series. It's an AFD lens, and this still has an aperture ring on the back, as you can see here. Let me zoom you in a little bit and sort the focus out. You can see it still has an aperture ring on the back. So this is a lens really designed for digital cameras. It was never designed for the EM. This is a wide angle zoom, and this is a 3.5 to 4.5. It's not a brilliant wide angle zoom, but it's okay. You have to focus manually, and you'd have to set the aperture, use it exactly the same as you would a manual focus Nikon lens, and it works just fine. There's no issue with that. It won't autofocus because the camera body isn't an autofocus body, but the aperture works fine, and other than that, you can use these old lenses. The only ones you can't use are the ones without an aperture ring, so things like the G series lenses, they won't work on these bodies. And I wouldn't really use a pre-AI lens. There's not that many of them about, and they are fetching strong money at the moment, so I'll stick to using AI compatible lenses with this. If you're a beginner and introduction to photography, then you just stick with the AI lenses. Very good investment, because if you do upgrade to an FE or an FM or even an F3, these same lenses will work with those camera bodies, no issue at all. These lenses will even work with the digitals, like I've got a D3 and they work on the D3 okay. So yeah folks, Nikon EM, nice little camera, as I said, highly recommended. I thank you very much for watching. A like and a subscription is always appreciated. Questions, comments, queries, experiences, stories down below. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.